My name is Paige Sutton, and I was 32 years old the day my father decided my life was worth less than a hospital bill. I didn't hear him say it. I couldn't. I was lying unconscious in a hospital bed with tubes running down my throat and machines breathing for me, but witnesses heard him. The nurses heard him, the doctors heard him, and one woman wrote every single word down. "Let her go," my father said. "She's not worth the cost." He sat 3 feet from my bed when he said it. 3 feet, close enough to touch my hand. Close enough to see the bruises on my face. Close enough to hear the machines keeping me alive. And still he signed the papers, a do not resuscitate order. Not because doctors believed I had no chance. Not because my condition was hopeless, not because it was medically necessary. He signed it because surgery was expensive. That's what he told them. The cost wasn't worth it, neither was I. My father was absolutely certain that would be the last decision he ever had to make about me. He was wrong. 3 days later, I opened my eyes. And 24 hours after I made a single phone call, his entire world started collapsing. But to understand why, you need to understand the kind of man my father was. My father, Richard Sutton, loved money more than people, always had, always would. Money came first, appearances came second. Everything else came after, including family, especially family. Growing up, I learned early that affection in our house came with conditions. Good grades earned approval. Success earned attention, failure earned silence. Love wasn't something you received, it was something you performed for. My mother spent 27 years trying to earn his approval. She never succeeded. When cancer took her at 53, my father cried exactly once. Then he spent the funeral asking lawyers about life insurance paperwork. That was Richard Sutton. By 32, I hadn't spoken to him in almost 4 years. The separation wasn't dramatic, no screaming, no huge fight. Just thousands of small disappointments piling on top of each other until the relationship finally collapsed under its own weight. The last conversation we'd had ended with him asking whether I planned to repay him for raising me. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. After that, I stopped calling. And honestly, life became peaceful. The accident happened on a rainy Thursday. A delivery truck crossed 3 lanes without warning. I never saw it coming. Witnesses later said my car spun twice before hitting a guardrail. The impact shattered my left leg, collapsed a lung, caused internal bleeding, and sent me into a coma. Because I wasn't married and hadn't completed updated medical directives, the hospital contacted my closest living relative. My father, the man I hadn't spoken to in years. The man who viewed compassion as a financial liability. The man who walked into that hospital and immediately asked about costs. The surgeon later told me what happened. The operation wasn't experimental. It wasn't impossible, it had an excellent success rate. They believed I would survive, but the surgery required authorization. My father refused. Then came the DNR order. One signature, one decision, one attempt to erase me. What he didn't know was that someone else was listening, a nurse named Angela Brooks. Angela had worked intensive care for almost 20 years. She'd seen difficult families before, she'd seen grief before. But something about my father's behavior bothered her. So she documented everything, every conversation, every refusal, every statement, every signature. At the time, she thought she was protecting herself. Years later, she would become the most important witness of my life. 3 days later, against every expectation my father had, I woke up. I remember blurry lights. Pain, voices, then confusion, lots of confusion. Why was everyone looking at me like they'd seen a ghost? The answer arrived quickly, because to some people, I was supposed to be dead. The doctors carefully explained everything. The accident, the coma, the paperwork, the DNR. My father's decisions. I listened quietly. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't demand answers. The anger was too deep for that ... It settled somewhere cold. Somewhere dangerous, a place beyond emotion. When the doctor finished talking, I asked one question. Do you have copies? He looked surprised. Copies of what? The paperwork. For 5 weeks I recovered. 5 very quiet weeks. Everyone expected drama, there wasn't any. Everyone expected confrontation, there wasn't any. I focused on physical therapy, medical records, legal consultations, financial audits, and information. Lots of information. Because my mother taught me something before she died. Never make a move while you're emotional, make it when you're prepared. During those 5 weeks, I learned something fascinating. My father wasn't wealthy. Not really, he looked wealthy. Big house, luxury cars, country club memberships, designer suits. But beneath the surface, everything was leveraged. Loans, mortgages, debt, refinancing, more debt. He had spent years building an image he couldn't actually afford, and recently things had become worse. Much worse, he needed money, desperately. Suddenly his decision at the hospital made perfect sense. Then Angela gave me one more piece of information, the piece that changed everything. The day my father refused my surgery, he made a statement in front of multiple witnesses, a statement that was documented. A statement that directly contradicted legal responsibilities tied to family trusts and financial management agreements. In short, he had admitted something he never should have admitted. And now it was recorded forever, so I made a phone call. One phone call, that's all it took. 24 hours later, attorneys started contacting him. 48 hours later, auditors arrived. 3 days later, frozen accounts appeared. A week later, investigators were reviewing transactions going back years. And for the first time in his life, Richard Sutton discovered what it felt like to lose control. He, man who tried to sign away my future, suddenly found strangers examining every detail of his own. And they didn't like what they found. The investigation lasted nearly a year. When it finished, the results were devastating. Hidden transfers, unauthorized withdrawals, mismanaged funds, violations nobody thought would ever be discovered. My father spent decades believing he was smarter than everyone around him. The problem with that mindset is simple. Eventually you start believing your own lies. And when that happens, mistakes become inevitable. The final hearing took place 18 months after I woke from the coma. I remember watching my father walk into the room. He looked older, smaller, tired. For the first time in my life, he seemed human. Not powerful, not intimidating, just human. The judge reviewed findings, penalties, orders, restitution, consequences. Then it was over. Years of deception ended in less than an hour. Afterward, my father approached me. For a moment, I thought he might apologize. Instead, he asked a question. Was all this really necessary? I looked at him. This man had sat beside my hospital bed and decided I wasn't worth saving. This man had chosen money over his own daughter. And somehow he still believed he was the victim, so I gave him the only answer he deserved. You made that decision when you signed the paper, then I walked away. Today, 4 years later, I still carry scars from the accident. Some physical, some emotional, both heal with time. People often ask whether I hate my father. The answer is no. Hate requires energy. And is no longer worth spending it. What I feel is something much simpler, gratitude. Because the day he tried to let me die was the day he finally revealed exactly who he was. And once you know the truth about someone, they lose the power to hurt you. My father thought a signature would end my story. Instead, it started a new chapter. One where I survived, one where the truth came out. And one where the man who tried to bury me discovered that some people are impossible to erase, especially when they wake up.